This happened when I was 10. I'm female, dark brown hair and tan creamy skin, average height, just so you get the full picture. Considering my age and build, I would not have fought back particularly well had something happened at this time. At the time, I lived with my mother and younger brother who must have been about 7 or 8. We all lived in a pretty secure area of town, and what's more, our apartment had a security guard. To get into the lobby, he had to buzz you in, unless you had your own key card. The elevator was activated by keycard too, so either you had your own or the security guard would have to key you in. Also, a small screen was inside our apartment with a button to call security if needed. This made us feel safe to some extent, but my mum is cautious as a person and is always very aware. We were moving and sold a lot of stuff, including our TV, a normal size flat screen thing. We couldn't have taken everything with us, so it had to go. Eventually a man, mid-30s or 40s, got in touch expressing an interest in the TV. He said he'd drop by our apartment the same day, and he did, but a little later than expected, around 7 p.m. He does all the usual checks to see if it works properly and eventually starts asking my mum about where my dad is. He lived abroad at the time. And then he starts asking me questions like where my school was and how old I am. Being a naturally friendly person, I answered and ended up telling him all about a field trip I took with class to a beach. He then asks if he can connect his phone to the TV to project images of the beach. He had apparently been there before. My mum reluctantly agrees, and so he does. In these pictures there are some pretty young women. He says he's a photographer and he would like me to model for him sometime. At this point, my mum pulls me closer to her, frowning and politely declining. I didn't suspect anything, and I am in fact excited, and then keep asking my mother to please let me model. She tells me to be quiet and doesn't sound happy at all. He continues to talk about his photography and said I would make a good model. On and on, while I kept getting more eager and nagging my mum to let me do it. I had no idea of his intentions and was completely okay with the idea. I also noticed the woman in the photo was wearing a skimpy bikini thing, and since I really wanted to be grown up, you all remember what that's like, I asked if I could wear one. He said yes. My mum, I could tell, was completely freaked out by this. I suspected nothing, of course, and with a childlike innocence I asked him if I would get money. Again, he said yes and kept encouraging me to pose for him. Looking back now, I feel terrible for my mother, who knew exactly what was going on but couldn't stop me. On top of all of that, he told me repetitively how good a model I was while I giggled through pose after pose, tossing my hair, arms above my head or hand on my hip. I realize now that was creepy as hell. At this point, he's been in the apartment for over an hour now. He says he's calling his friends to ask if he can buy the TV. Why would he do that? Who knows? He speaks with him for a bit and then says he needs to call his wife at this time. Again, we let him. When he hangs up, my mum asks if he wants a TV again. He tries to start a random conversation to distract her, but it's really late and we're getting tired. My mum calmly explains that it's late now and her kids, my brother and I, are tired and that we need to shower and sleep. At which point this guy says, "Oh, that's fine, they can do that, I don't mind," then encourages us to go wash. Even I was creeped out at this point. My mum told him to come back another day. He got angry, insisting he stay because he wanted to check this or that feature on the TV. My mum stood her ground, but I saw that she was scared, alone with this creep and 2 young children to boot. After a long argument, she turned to me, telling me to go into my room with my brother. Needless to say, I didn't argue. We went into my room and shut the door behind us. I heard the front door open and my mum telling him to leave or she'd call security. He again tried to stay, but she wasn't having any and said something along the lines of, "Yeah, no, get out of my apartment now or I'm calling security." He finally left. My mum put us to bed. She probably didn't sleep at all that night, and we thought that would be the end of it. The next day he came back under the same pretext as before, but now it was clear that he had absolutely no interest in the TV, just in us. Security, knowing what had happened prior to that day, immediately called my mum to know if it was okay to let him through or not. I asked if it was the photographer guy again. My mum nodded before motioning me to be quiet, then told the security guard they weren't to let him in, thanked them for calling her first, and that was the end of it. Apparently he got aggressive with the security guard when they tried to show him out. I don't know if he tried anything after that, but I'll ask my mum and post an update if I learn anything. There is something innately wrong about a man who comes into a young mother's apartment, tries to recruit her kid for bikini pics or worse, then refuses to leave. It's sinister and creepy, and I don't like to think what would have happened. I am really uneasy about the encounter I just had. Any insight would be so appreciated. I, 20 female, live in a large multi-building apartment complex, so there are a lot of neighbors I have never met or seen before. I stopped to pet a cat who roams around the complex while I was taking out the trash, and a man, mid-30s to 40s, that I did not know, sees me and approaches me. He says hello and asks how I am. I say hello back and ask him the same, to which he says, "Trying to survive the dark and brutal world we live in." So, I'm uncomfortably like, yeah. No alarm bells signaled at this point, but then he goes, "So, how's the blue beetle you drive?" And I'm immediately feeling creeped, given I've never met or seen this man. Then he asks if I enjoy being a student at college, the one I attend. At this point I'm scared and say, "Why would you know that?" And he laughs and says, "Come on, it's obvious." He then begins to warn me about how the world is a malicious place and how people are cruel. He says not to trust anyone and to watch my back because you never know what people will do in this area. I try to wrap it up and tell him to have a good night, and he tries asking for my specific unit or for my name. I deflect and tell him bye again and rush to leave. As soon as I got inside, I start crying and shaking because I've never had such a bad gut feeling about a person. I'm home alone now and feel beyond creeped out. His only conversational points were casually mentioning information a stranger shouldn't know and warnings regarding the cruelty of mankind, so altogether it almost felt like an indirect threat. Please, any outside perspectives on this interaction would be appreciated. Do I need to worry? So, yesterday, me and my girlfriend visited my parents. They have a pretty big balcony where they always go to have a smoke. So my mum went out to smoke a cigarette and noticed said man. He was walking up and down the sidewalk directly in front of their balcony. We are on the first floor, by the way. So we could see him right down there. Nothing creepy so far, right? Right. After watching him passing by a couple of times, she comes inside where we watch TV and told us that every time he passes by, he was staring directly at her every single time he passed. So I got curious and went out there to check at it myself. Sure enough, he passed and looked right at me. He did this 2 or 3 times every time he passed by. Then my father came out too. Sure enough, again the old creepy dude did it again, staring at all 3 of us. After he did this for like 15 minutes, my dad yelled at him, stating that he should take a picture of us, with him looking so hard. The man gave no response at all, just kept staring as he walked by. Anyways, after that he didn't pass by a balcony again, rather keeping somewhat hidden behind the bushes that are on both sides of the apartment complex. But he saw us still. We know, 'cause we saw him too, and so did he. He was wearing a doctor's mask. All the time that he was going past, it was easy to see he was looking at us or not. He continued this for a good 30 minutes. After that, he got in his parked car right in front of there, while again looking at us at the balcony the whole time until he enters his car. Once inside, he peered through the seats, looking at us one last time. While I gave him the finger, he then left. Can someone please let me know their thoughts on this? So, I'm 31 female, and I have been living at the same apartment complex for nearly 4 years. There's a guy who's about 45 or so who lives on the same floor as me and has for about the past year or so. He's just awful. I usually don't notice or recognize a lot of people who live here, but I quickly started noticing this guy because of how rude he is. Whenever he would happen to go downstairs in the elevator together, in the morning before work, he would just mean mug, and then we would walk out of the glass doors into the parking lot. I would be walking behind him, and he'd let the doors close on me and not hold them open. One day, about 6 months ago, my fiance and I walked up behind him waiting for the elevator, and when he saw us, he was standing in front of us and just shook his head, almost in disgust. Keep in mind that my fiancée nor I have ever had a conversation with this man. Then, where things really get strange. About 6 months ago, I decided to hold the elevator doors open for him when I saw him coming down the hall. He told me thank you, and when we got downstairs for the first time ever, he held the doors open for me. The next time, my then fiancé, now husband, saw him in the parking lot. Whenever he saw my now husband with me, he mouthed, "Fucking bitch," to himself as he passed us. But to make things worse, whenever I see him alone in the parking lot, he smiles and smirks at me, and smiles as he walks past me, almost like two people have a history together, or like we know each other personally. It's weird, but about a month ago, when he saw my husband and I together, once again, in the mailroom, he covered his face with his mail. Can someone please explain to me what the hell they think is going on with this man? I took a lot of psychological classes in college, and I can't even explain this behavior. I'm getting strange serial killer vibes, to be honest. Like I said, we have literally never had a conversation with him. My husband and I are both very friendly people, and I feel like we give off those vibes, so it's strange. I'm a 28-year-old man. The following happened a couple years back, when the city of the apartment that I am currently renting with my brother was more gang-ridden. Fortunately, a lot of those people moved out at the end of last year, so things are now safe. However, at the time, where I lived was rather dangerous, and the following shows that. It was February 2020, and the rent was due by the 5th. So before the deadline, my brother and I went and withdrew the money for rent. Then, shortly after we came home, I left my apartment and I went down to the rental office to pay. Got the receipt, etc. As I was leaving and heading back to my apartment, though, is where the encounter all began. I was heading back. I looked across the street and I saw a tall skinny man with his pants somewhat hanging below his waist across the street, going for a walk up ahead. I merely glanced at him, sort of like how people can merely glance at someone when they're going for a walk and they see someone across the street. However, as soon as the guy notices my glance, he starts screaming at me viciously. "Hey, ain't nobody talking to you. Ain't nobody thinking about you, man." I was pretty taken aback and kinda shocked. However, not wanting to give him attention, I pretended like I didn't hear him and continued walking, not looking in his direction. However, as I continued walking back to my apartment, he started screaming profanities and more at me. Then he started to cross the street to where I was going. However, because he was ahead of me on the opposite side of the street, when he decided to cross, instead of heading directly towards me, he did the following. He decided to cross the street and sit on some outside apartment steps up ahead to where I was going. The reason was so that I would have to cross his path if I were to get to the front of my apartment. He just sat there, waiting for me to pass him. As I was walking, he was dead silent, but you could tell that he could lash out at any second, which gave me chills. My heart was pounding in my chest, and thoughts started running through my head. What if he had a weapon? Would he try to jump me when I pass him? Would he follow me back to my apartment? With my thoughts racing, I quickly remembered the back entrance, so I went around to the back of the apartment and took the entrance there, which led me to my place. I told my brother what happened, and we immediately agreed that the police should be called, so that is what was done. The police were called, and it took about 7 minutes for them to get there. Shortly into waiting for the police to arrive, I looked out the window of my top floor, and there the guy was. He was walking about the area with a suspicious look on his face, quickly looking back every now and then to see if someone was watching him. Eventually, the police arrived. I told them what had happened, gave them a description of the guy, etc. The police agreed to do a quick sweep of the area. However, the man was nowhere to be found, though they said they would keep an eye out, even though nothing came up again. Who was that man? I don't know. He may have been on drugs, doing illegal activities, which caused him to become very paranoid, etc., but who knows? As for me, all I know is if my apartment did not have that back entrance, things could have possibly ended badly. About a month ago, I, 21 female, moved downtown into a new apartment with my boyfriend, male, 22. It's been going great, and we have loved having a smaller space together with our dog and cat. But recently we've been having weird stuff happen. For reference, we are on the bottom level. A few weeks ago after work, I was sitting on my couch waiting for my boyfriend to get home when I heard my front door slightly open. At this time I wasn't locking it, so my boyfriend could just walk in without having to dig out his keys, etc. I thought maybe it was just the wind since the door has trouble latching anyway. I walked up to it and opened the door, and a man was walking up my steps but bolted away towards the opposite direction when he saw me. It was weird. I didn't tell my boyfriend because honestly I thought nothing of it. Fast forward, and just a few days later I was sitting on my couch playing my Switch, and I hear a noise from our back door that I'm sitting a few feet away from. All of a sudden, someone ripped open our screen door and grabbed the glass sliding door handle to open it, but they ran away when I yelled, "What the hell?" It happened so fast and I was so shocked I didn't see what they looked like. I called my boyfriend in the other room and told him what had happened. He grabbed his skateboard, yeah, I know, our only defense at the moment, and went to check the front door. As he opened it, I heard him say, "What's up, man?" And then he came back inside. He told me a man was walking up our steps and turned to walk the opposite direction when my boyfriend opened the door. The same thing that happened to me a few days prior. I told him my experience and he got freaked out. I messaged a few of my friends and they offered to give us their rig camera and suggested we get a better weapon than just a skateboard. My theory is someone is scoping out our apartment, knowing that we're new, definitely startled us, and it makes me sit on edge most days, or at least every time I'm home alone. I do feel myself constantly glancing out the back door, making sure that it's still locked. Now, by George, is that some terrifying stuff that's been passed down through these people in this creepy encounter forum. Hello everyone, Grimm here. I thought for this one, because it's one that's kinda close to home, that I would share a experience that I had. It's not really creepy though, it's more where I did something stupid and ended up paying a bit of a price for it. So, I was a young man in Dunedin. It's a place in New Zealand for those who don't know. And I was out on the town, getting completely and utterly hammered off my face, barely walking. I don't even know how I got home. And there was this fella that I saw. He was on the side of the street, just down a corner street from where I was. And he was on crutches. He's literally just on the floor, like shit-faced, the same as I am. And I remember helping him up and then leading him to my house and letting him crash out on my couch. Didn't think much of it because I was shit-faced and I was trying to be kind, but I remember waking up to the guy like literally standing over me in my bed. Yeah. Needless to say, I jumped out of bed very quickly for that guy. Again, I was too friendly. I just asked him what was wrong and then let him kind of continue to sleep on the couch. I didn't go back to sleep after that. Obviously. But yeah, it was a pretty creepy situation to go through. Hey, kindness is a weird thing, right? Well, anyway, I have given you guys enough of my blabbering. I hope you enjoyed my encounter. If I think of anything else that happened that might fit into one of these, I may give some more backstory about myself, but hey, who knows. For all of those who made it to the end, thank you very much. I appreciate each and every one of you. For anyone new who made it this far, please remember to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel out, and if you have enjoyed today's video, I mean, there's no harm in watching more of them, right? Well, as always, you know what I say. Be safe wherever you are. Have a good night or day, and I'm Grimm, and I'm, well, signing off.